Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the Tuftonboro Board of Selectmen meeting for September 11th to order. Before we do the pledge, it was 16 years ago, right about this hour, that things changed forever in America. In memory of those planes that went down, could we take a moment of silence, please? Thank you. To honor America, I'm going to ask Clay Gallagher to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is a public hearing on RSA 3195, and I'll read the Town of Tuftonboro public hearing notice pursuant to RSA 31:95-B, Roman 3, lowercase a. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing to accept the additional allocation of highway block grant funds from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation pursuant to Senate Bill 38 in the amount of $70,710.48. The hearing will take place on Monday, September 11th, 2017 at 9 a.m. at the town office, 240 Middle Road, Center, Tuftonboro, New Hampshire, per order Tuftonboro Board of Selectmen, Lloyd Wood, Bill Markison, and Chip Albee. On August 10th, we received information about Senate Bill 38. You want to speak on it, Bill? I know that you've done a lot of research.
This was an additional allocation of money that was enacted by the state legislature out of budget surplus to all cities and towns for use on highways, docks, and bridges for work that was not previously authorized at town meeting. So this is this money goes into a special account, is non-lapsing, and it is the responsibility of the governing body to use that money toward projects that fit the description, which is to say highway work and docks and bridges, and to maintain an exact accounting for future report back to the Department of Transportation.
Any questions?
Have you picked something to work on? Or are you just accepting the money for now?
Accepting the money for now.
To put some conditions on it, it can't be something that we have in the budget. And I don't believe it can be anything that we have on our CIP either.
Correct.
I'm not aware of that being a condition.
Oh, okay.
It can't be work that's been previously authorized. And so, but it is non-lapsing. And there are a variety of projects that are out there that that certainly could benefit from it. On the other hand, there is, at this point, there is no time limit on when we get into it. And my view is that it makes sense to evaluate different places that it doesn't all have to be used on one project either, but to evaluate where we can best put the funds to use.
How much is it?
70,000 and
So
change.
you can do something.
So,
Yeah, we can't fix a bridge. There was a weight limit put on Friday, it was on the Saw Road Bridge. That's what I have to work on.
Any other questions? I guess the next order of business is that we officially accept it, vote to accept the windfall.
So I move that we accept the additional allocation of highway block grant funds provided under Senate Bill 38.
I'll second.
Okay. We need to enter the exact amount into the... It's $70,710.48. Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much. Next item of business is public input. We're ready to move right along. Appointments. Library. Come on down. How are you?
Thanks. Okay. Beginning with statistics, on the patronage side, we registered 14 new patrons in August, making 96 for the year. Pretty heavy computer use and Wi-Fi use during August, both in and outside of the library. Heavy casual use too. That means people who come in for reasons other than to check something out. For instance, to read the paper, to build something with the Lego set, to look at an exhibit, something like that. So we had a busy August. On the circulation side, that is borne out by the numbers on the other side. Lots of people read lots of books. Print circulation was out circulated everything else combined in August, which is interesting because it doesn't always happen that way anymore. But we circulated 2,200 print books and 84 electronic books. So that's the way it's working still at TFL. We are about 40% of the way through an inventory. So far, we have inventoried 13,801 items, and there are 30 items unaccounted for. Some of those we know about, some of them may turn up as we finish the inventory, just to show. It does happen occasionally. But
Overdue book charges,
we don't do that. We have a conscience jar. No, we make
2
more money
cents
that
a
way.
day.
No, we make more money with a conscience jar. It's very interesting. So I think 30 lost items out of nearly 14,000 is indicates pretty good stewardship of taxpayer property. And what we have left to inventory are adult and juvenile fiction and nonfiction. All the other pieces of the collection have been done. So there are about 19,000 items left to inventory. And then we'll know where we are. And in other news,
Hey there.
May I know?
Why does she look at you when she says
Well-
all the news?
The septic system of the library has failed.
Sorry.
Okay. Pardon?
How would we find that out?
a patron was taking a walk in the woods, a casual user of library resources, and saw a black puddle on top of the leach field and came and told me. And I called DJs and they confirmed it and said, you better call JP. And they were there last Thursday, and we just had the tank pumped about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months. And they confirmed that the distribution box is just jammed with roots, and that the pipes, which are old clay pipes, because it was done in 1969, are not usable anymore.
Even to the point where even we went in there and tried to grind them out, the root structure is probably so impacted around that clay, if the clay pipes have not collapsed over this period of time, which is their habit, unfortunately. You can grind them out, but you're not going to get rid of the root problem So the stuff is still not going to drain. I believe you had a copy.
Is this it?
You got a copy of the report from,
Do you see this?
I didn't. Oh, I did see this, I was trying to figure out where it was.
yeah.
The yellow ticket we were talking
So we have any number of choices to be done. If we are to what I would encourage the selectmen to consider is that if you're going to replace the field, don't replace the field in its present location. Because if we are to be successful in our addition plans, the field is going to be relocated in a different place anyways. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
If the warrant article passes, that includes a new septic.
It does. But that's, in talking to the fellows from J&B, they said, all right, it's a 1,000-gallon tank. At a gallon and a half of flush, you could live through until such time, but I don't know that's necessarily what we want to do, because that would be at least probably a 3 to 4 week pumping of the system before we run into trouble
At $200 a pop,
at $300 a pop. So.
which is a discount from their usual price.
about. So is that how it's set up now? Or
We haven't done anything
or
yet.
have you closed
They
that
have given us a
down?
bid. No, we're just telling people to be very sparing with water use.
So we pumped the tank, we're sitting on an empty tank with spared water use. Okay. And we don't have,
And when the tank fills up, then you have to pump it again because
it becomes just
the water doesn't tend to go out through the leach field.
Right.
I mean, the pump was running. I heard the pump running, but it's just clogged. It's a failed system. It happens.
So the septic system has a pump involved in it?
It's
as
a
well?
pump system, yeah.
Okay.
2-tank system pumping up into the field.
So,
Sorry, it's not really very
I don't know
funny.
that we probably even had, it was built in the 60s, I think, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Not 1969, I believe.
Yeah, so I don't even know if we had were there permits? That was back when it was called something else.
Yes, there were permits in '69, but a conventional system, the maximum life was estimated at 25 years. So you've doubled that.
So we
already.
won.
We won.
Yeah.
We won. If you take care of them, they do last a really long time.
But we need to redesign. It's not
You'd
just
have to have a
matter of-
redesign regardless
Right.
of whether you're replacing it or
Expanding it.
relocating it or
Mhm.
expanding it.
So what's the next step?
Maybe our code officer can provide some input.
Well, you can get a new design, obviously, and put it in a new location where it could possibly be if we put an addition on. Just gotta make sure that everything that's for that is outside the limits of construction, so they don't dig anything up.
Mhm.
So it would probably need a larger tank as well. So it would pretty much be a whole new system with a pump and alarm this time, so you know when it's backed up, so.
And
It's just a new design, so,
all new pipes.
yeah, from the building out, pretty much, yeah. I mean, judging from the plan that I had seen from the new addition proposed, the line leaves the building in the same location anyways, I believe. So
No, it's completely different.
it's a new location, correct, but it's still, the old stuff still has to come into, because the old plumbing, the old bathrooms are still there.
Oh,
They
I
don't
see
get
what you mean.
removed.
Right.
So there will be a tank for those, and there could possibly be another tank for another section down the other
I
end.
see
So
what you mean.
Mhm.
that portion could be used as long as it's designed out and around, so you don't disturb it again.
So we need some research for our next meeting?
Well, I think we need to obviously figure out that we're gonna pump this for a while, because we're gonna have to put in an RFP for a design
Yes.
and then build, and we don't, I can't recall any money in our budget for building septic systems, but we might have some somewhere. So.
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, so we're kind of pushed out until next spring, by the sounds of it.
Right. The
Does it
important
count as a
thing-
highway?
The important thing is how do we keep it, the building safe and usable?
Well, we have to come up with a pumping schedule, I guess, with DJ or whoever it is we're using. Yeah.
Can you folks work with Jack and get that information?
Well, we know what the price will be, and they said it was probably gonna be every month, so it's gonna be $200 a month until we
It's gonna be a $1,200 expense between now and town meeting. And then beyond that, because we're not gonna be digging the 1st of March.
Now, there is an invoice here for $300. Is that for?
That's for what they did last Thursday when they came and dug everything up and
The
discovered what the
inspection,
problem
yeah.
was, yes.
Now, does that come out?
And that came with the report.
Is this bill been paid?
No, that's why we're here,
Okay.
one reason.
So you're coming to us for money, aren't you?
Yep, yet again.
Well, the bill has to be paid. I mean, we're not gonna,
Yes, it does.
can it be paid out of contingency? That's what that account is there for unseen expenditures. I just toss it out.
I don't know if we want to get into that quite yet, do we? I mean, I don't have a
I think
budget in front of me. but I'm sure we can find
yeah,
some.
I think it gets paid out of library outside maintenance, or building maintenance. And yeah, again, I don't know.
I think that was 2,000 total, I'm not sure. And I'm not sure how much has been expended.
All right, well, I think we can figure, I mean, I think we need a budget in front of us before we decide
Yeah.
where the money's coming
Sure.
from, so we'll do that
Yeah.
next week.
Would you be the ones then to correspond to this proposal for pumping?
I don't think so.
That would be us. We just need to know when it's okay to
Yeah,
say
I
yes,
don't
go
think
ahead.
we want to coordinate the pumping or do any of that.
No, but I didn't know if you, since the bills will be, or we'll be passing them along, or should I tell them to send the bills to the town?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
we're gonna consider it a town building for the time being.
That's a true fact, actually.
It is the town's building.
There.
And there you have it.
Well, good news from you. Any better news than that?
It's a lovely day otherwise.
It is a wonderful day.
We just had a gift of appreciated stock
We did.
for the building fund.
It was a very nice gesture on the part of a patron. We got a call last week from a financial firm in Wolfboro saying someone wanted to give us appreciated stock, and I executed that over the weekend, so we'll go to our building fund, about
Unfortunately, it's not
$3,000,
enough for a
so
septic system.
it was very nice.
I don't know that you could pay for a septic system with it, but or is it unencumbered? It's just
That's
whatever
for the
you wanna
building
use it for.
fund.
Yeah.
It goes to the building fund, so.
Yeah, because that's the next discussion, I guess, would be if we're gonna replace it, we need to figure out, we don't wanna replace it twice.
Correct.
So we should figure out where it's gonna go to be most
It
advantageous.
sounds like they've already given it some
They've
thought.
cited it on the plans.
They
The
did.
architects have cited it, and you,
All right.
yeah.
But I think Jack hit the nail right on the head and said that we want to make sure that we do it. It's not going to be affected by any potential construction.
Right, you don't have,
Because the existing's going to go right over the whole field is going to be dug up as part of the addition anyway.
I think we could, maybe Jack could get into the permitting costs, because we're gonna have to file a permit at some point.
Permit's $300, let me tell you that right now, it's the design.
Right.
Okay, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Anything else from library? Thank you. Have a good week.
Thank you, Christie.
Tell everybody to
Thanks for not shooting the messenger.
No problem.
television guy.
I'm sorry?
Building?
Enjoy the pea in the woods, but I can't say that on television. But this is YouTube, I can say it on YouTube.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. We have 75 building permits, 18 new houses. I've done 310 inspections, and I'm working on prices for a bunch of repairs for this building. And
For this building.
this building for it, yes. Some are over 10,000, so you're gonna go CIP even though I want to do them for next year.
Yes.
Okay. That's about it, and then, like I said, the library septic, so do you want to just contact someone for a design, or?
Yeah,
Design's gonna cost probably
I
a
think
couple
we have to,
$1,000s at the most.
we have to figure out what we're gonna do, so I'm not sure we're doing that this meeting, but we will have to put it up for.
That figure was gonna be asked during our deliberations, so you ought to get it, right?
Yeah, but I don't know that they can actually give us a bona fide price on the design without figuring out where the location is, and what the size
It's
is.
usually around a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, I had mine designed for the house 7 years ago, and it was about 2,000.
The installation's a different story, but the design is, they're pretty uniform across the board. It depends on who you
Because
get.
it's
but-
pumped and all of that stuff.
It's-
Well,
doesn't
And,
matter.
and
It may be
because,
different.
because the field has failed, we can't just replace the field.
You can, but it has to have a design, you just can't replace in kind anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have a bunch of information from the old, so.
And
It may
is-
be more for a commercial.
Right, I was gonna say, it's
design,
commercial different than
Because you
residential.
might need an engineer.
Always in engineers.
I had a,
Oh,
okay,
Like the trains
do you have
are.
anything else? I have
No.
a couple of questions. How are we coming on, we've had some success on property cleanups.
Mhm.
and
County attorney's working on 2 more, I heard, so.
It's
I'm
moving
getting a
along.
response, so.
The other thing is, I don't know if you're involved in it, didn't we put money aside to clean 2 buildings?
Yep,
And when should we do that?
pretty quick, I was waiting for the summer season to be over, so.
Do we have to, does the company move furniture around, or,
Somewhat, I mean, they're not gonna clean the whole room out.
no, but,
They're not doing carpets, they're just doing walls and windows and whatever.
the other thing is at the townhouse, who's responsible for cleaning up the closet on the left-hand side?
It's
And taking
old
the-
stuff, it's town clerk stuff and all that, so we've moved a whole bunch already.
And the
so.
books that are on the shelves, nobody
Same thing.
wants?
Ted is gonna find out if they're any good or not.
Okay,
A lot of them got moved upstairs in this building.
okay, you need a hand hauler. I have nothing else.
No, good. Good.
Okay,
Thank you, Jack.
thank you. Transfer station? Come on down.
How are you? Good morning. Surprised to see me this morning. I'm supposed to be in a plane to West Palm Beach, so. But,
Plans changed, sir?
plans changed.
No place to land, eh?
Yeah, I moved my vacation,
Plenty of C and D down there.
right. On the job training. right?
Yeah, there you go.
I moved my vacation time back a week, so it'll just be a
Who
week
gives these
later.
people vacations?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, on the back of the monthly totals for August, we had 13 solid waste compactors and 12 CD containers. That's dropped a little bit on the CD, which is good news. It's about the same for solid waste. We shipped out 1 trailer load of corrugated cardboard, 23 tons worth, and we made $4,270 on that as revenue. We moved 1 load of scrap metal, 8.5 tons, $455 of revenue after shipping costs, after trucking costs. 1 truckload of UBC aluminum. We shipped out 14,820 pounds. We made $9,300 in revenue on that. 1 electronics container swap out, $1,075 in cost. And we moved 2 30-yard CD containers from the property cleanup on Old Woods Road. And that's going, you guys have established the other buildings to pay that.
When I checked out the property last year, there were extraordinary number of tires buried under those big
Oh, yeah,
cans.
we were really lucky.
Why were we lucky?
Waste management dumped the container, they separated out the tires. You're not supposed to put tires in the container, obviously, and the fee is $25 a tire. And there was quite a few tires in there, so it would have been a massive fee, but they kind of let it slide.
Well, it happened on your watch, so thank you.
Yeah. One of the drivers here helped us out with that. One of our normal drivers that came in here, he gave us a little break on it. So just in future cleanups, we have to remember not to put tires in.
Tires and TVs, right?
Yeah.
Right. The total revenue at the end of July is approximately $72,211. That's fairly close. This is around $20,000 higher than the same time last year. So we are collecting a little bit more for C&D, and obviously we have aluminum shipment, that helps a little bit. So we are busier, obviously, than last year. Hopefully that'll continue through the end of the year. Lots of good comments on the new hazardous waste collection program. It was July 29th and August 5th. I'll have Kerry come in at the next meeting and give a briefing on the exact numbers of how many people utilized it. And we helped them out. We helped out in Meredith and we helped out in Ossipee on the 2 days. Kerry went to both of them. He's done an excellent job on that, by the way. And our experience so far with it is that we would highly recommend that our residents use the Ossipee turn-in date and go to Ossipee, because it was very, very, very crowded at Moltenboro for their date. And between the two, it was Moltenboro or Ossipee. And we would highly recommend our residents use the Ossipee. There's not as much traffic, it's not as frustrating. But he'll give a briefing on that the next time we come in to the meeting. I was asked to give a class at Lakes Region Planning Commission in Meredith a couple weeks ago about how to maximize the revenue from recyclables in small communities, small towns. And that went very well. There was about 30 operators from various towns throughout the state and 4 or 5 different selectmen from different locations. It went very well. It was a good session. They all got training credit through the state DES program for 2 hours, so I guess I was counted as a state trainer for a while. I have a couple articles that I obtained, and that was this class presentation here. The second page of that and this page goes along. I got a couple articles and some heads up from Casella and from LRPC about future China drawdowns on what they're going to buy, what they're going to eliminate from buying, and how much of an effect that will have on the towns. We are basically primarily discussion on plastics in those 2 articles that you can have in the program there. We are well positioned because we collect 1 through 7 plastics, and we ship it out in an open container, and somebody else does the sorting. The primary emphasis, they're no longer going to accept, there's no market anymore for 1 through 7 baled and shipped out. So a lot of people had been bailing 1 through 7, but there's not going to be a market anymore. They're not going to accept it. They're also gonna separate out different items, but luckily, the way we have had the program set up, it's not gonna have an effect on us at all.
I
So
have a
again,
copy.
it's a good deal for us. that we
I seem to
set up.
recall about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when you came to us, and remember when
We changed mixed paper. to-
cardboard and mixed paper, and you said, you know,
Somebody said,
we asked you, what does your crystal ball say? And you said, plastic's about ready to change.
Right.
So,
well, we were getting indications.
You approved correct.
We were getting indications from Europe that what they call virgin plastic, new plastic, when it's manufactured, was cheaper than recyclable plastics made. So if you made a new plastic bottle, it costs more with recyclables in it than a virgin plastic creation would be. And so that's your first indication that as far as establishing any kind of revenue stream is going to diminish and probably go into the negative. So we luckily enough, years ago, the right decision was made to set up the way we're set up. And so the bottom line for us is we're well positioned, and right now we don't have to make any changes. That's a good thing. I do not like making changes up there. So. Here's a copy of Mr. Barnhart came out, one of the new input for the Tuftonboro Times article for the end of this month, next month. And there's a copy of my submission for that. I've also completed 4 CIP entries and put them on the machine because I was expecting to be gone and I wanted to make sure I made the deadline. So I have 4 CIP entries, and the only one that isn't a placeholder, which would be, the others are placeholders for future expenses, and not for next year, 2018. The only one that's going to be for next year is connectivity through Spectrum. And we're working that. We do have a firm set number right now, but we're still working the issue and trying to get them to reduce or at least pay for part of it. So right now it's in the $11,000 range. It's about a half a mile of cable setup. You have to go through a couple different companies because the cable company doesn't own the telephone poles. The power company owns some of them. So that's the reason it takes so long. You have to give each utility 90 days to say they can hang a different wire, cable wire on their pole. And they'll wait until 89 days before they act on it. So if you have to go to a power company, you have to go to a utility company, you have to go to cable, then you have basically 2 90-day windows. So before you can get anything done, it's going to be 6 months. So.
And the copy I got says the cost to build or extend the 2,356 feet to your building is $11,261.
Right, 11.
Way down from the 35.
Well, yeah, somebody,
mouthed
yes.
off to you about.
Yeah, somebody jacked the price up after we were trying to negotiate. And I think it was one of their people there that didn't want to do it. So anyway, those CIP entries are in. I may have to do a little bit of editing on the main body because I put in the same as in the CIP, we'll put the 2017, the same verbiage. And I understand that won't automatically be updated, so I'll have to go back and retype the entire entry. So
It's a half a mile into there?
Yes. It goes
well, it's not. It's 4/10 of a mile to the main road, but where they have to come up with the pole is it's
Pole's
not on the
behind
main
the-
road.
Behind the property across the street.
Yeah, it's about a 2/10 of a
The
mile.
house that's on the road into the transfer station has no cable?
No. Now, the one house that does have cable that's strung from that back wire a couple of years ago was the one that's for sale, with the big barn. It's on 171 coming down towards Sodom, but it always has a political.
Beverly Bruce.
Lady
Yeah,
Bruce,
yeah.
but-
They had cable put in there.
Yeah.
So, but they came off from that back line post too, that's, so. And I also have the beginnings and most of the budget done for the transfer stations. This specifically is the labor line, and the only holdup I'll have on that, as far as getting it in by the 28th, is a COLA. So as soon as I get that, I can get that done. And that's it.
That's it. Any questions?
How are things at the swap shop? A while back, we had some issues with, as I remember, in a couple of areas, there seems to be quite a bit of dumping going on at the swap shop, stuff that really isn't swap shop, but rather than pay to get rid of it, they just dump it over there, and then we end up absorbing the cost of disposal.
Right.
Is that any better?
Up and down. Right now, we're in the down mode because a lot of people that are semi-professional yard sales every weekend. The stuff that hasn't sold or done over the whole summer, gets brought in large truckloads, at one time. And the reality is that when it's busy, we can't have somebody over at the swap shop. I mean, we just can't man that and still do all the other things that we have to do, especially when it's busy. So a lot of times, while we were standing there yesterday, and you drove out, in that 5 minutes you drove in there, 2 computer monitors were put in the swap shop.
Which is
$20
$20
of revenue that we've lost, that we have to pay for.
and
to get rid of
again,
them.
$20 of cost to get rid of them, right?
Exactly. So, and that adds up, and it adds up, after a weekend, after this weekend, we probably had 8 or 9 front-end bucket loads of stuff that we took out of the swap shop and dumped into the construction. And so we don't collect any revenue on that. It's not, there's a lot of benefits to having a swap shop, but most places that I know, and all the places that I've gone out to visit, the swap shop is either closed or manned by volunteers. Somebody not associated with the transfer station. The best way to have it would not have to be co-located with the transfer station at all. Because if you have to dump stuff, then they're gonna have to bring it from there to the dump, and it would be easy to recognize, and we wouldn't have that issue. We still would have people dropping stuff off. 3 people can't be everywhere at one time. So if we're busy up top, they're gonna dump the monitors off down in the scrap metal pile. If we're down by the scrap metal pile and out by the CD, they're gonna dump it off the swap shop, or they're gonna put it out by the tire container. So you're always gonna have a little bit of that. But it is frustrating when you carry 7 bucket loads, front end bucket loads, and that's a big bucket in the back. And put them in the CD, crunch it on down, it takes up a third of the container. Well, right there is $300. And you get done doing that, you get back out and you go bale a bale of cardboard, a bale of aluminum, and you're up compacting the compactor, and you look back down and there's 2 more bucket loads of crap sitting on the outside. It gets frustrating. And I'm sure every place that has a swap shop has gone through those same iterations.
Are there any specific recommendations that you would make in terms of dealing with the swap shop going forward?
The first recommendation I would have is to see if we can get volunteers or somebody that loves doing that kind of thing. And the only time the swap shop would be open would be when it's manned. when the person's there. You know, if we really want to have a swap shop, then, you know, somebody should be there to man it and run it and say, no, you can't drop that here. It costs money to get rid of that. You have to take that to the tenant.
Does the size of our swap shop in that current shipping container limit its effectiveness? In
Yes.
other words, there
It was
there is
worse.
there
it was
is
worse
goods-
directly across the street. It was
Right.
worse because, but even moved to that new location, now it's level where it's safer to be in there. But it's still shielded by people's cars.
Mhm.
So when you get 2 or 3 cars parked over there, you can't see from the compactor or from the building what's going
I
on.
guess what I'm thinking is it's a small
It's a very small area.
unit, which means if there is some stuff that may have some reuse value, it still can only stay there for a fairly short period of time because you got more stuff coming in all the time and
It's
you have to
overload.
just keep
And we
moving.
we siphon through, you know, and try to keep the good stuff, or what we think is the good stuff, you know, and what needs to be checked out.
So would a larger space help?
Large,
the issue?
that's why in the CIP write-up, in the storage facility, one corner of that storage facility was, you know, designed to be a swap shop inside, you know, and the other corner of the facility was gonna be a contractor swap shop, which we could very easily use. There's a lot of stuff that's thrown away in those CE containers that people would pay good money for, let alone be able to reutilize.
There's also several organizations that will come and get it, use it toward Habitat for Humanity.
Right, yeah.
So I know you've investigated them.
Just having a container like that, small and narrow, is very difficult, what you're saying. It gets very crowded very quickly.
But it seems to have improved since we've
Right,
articulated it.
it has, and a lot of people, and I don't want to give the wrong impression, you know, it's, the majority of the people are very good, you know, and very trustworthy, and, you know, I've even had guys come in and say, hey, I found out that I dumped the TV over there, and it cost $10, and I did, and I really feel bad, here's the $10. But for every one of them, there's
Well,
4 or 5 others.
yeah, right. Most
Well, we
people,
don't have
most people play by the rules.
Right.
There are some that abuse them. The same thing is true with solid waste.
Right.
I mean, we have some actors that put tremendous amounts of recyclables directly in the solid waste compactor.
Right.
And probably repeatedly the same people.
Right,
Most people recognize that there's some value for the town in segregating this stuff
Mhm.
and not paying to have it go into the solid waste stream, and take the time to separate it out so your regular waste goes in the compactor and the other stuff goes over in the recycling.
recyclable, yeah.
So, but not everybody feels that that they want to
Do that.
participate in that,
Right.
right?
Even if their spouse does.
Anything else for?
I guess it's going back and forth, and we don't know what the cost is. So, I mean,
Right.
is it a problem? I mean, you said you took 3 buckets out before, I don't know how many it was.
Well,
It's-
the cost basically yields to the difference between what we've collected for CD.
Yeah,
And it's part of that total.
right.
I can't tell you exactly how much because we haven't tracked,
I mean, I'm thinking if it needs personnel,
right.
it's gonna have to be more than $300 or $400 a month that we are losing in air quotes.
Oh, yeah, easily.
And,
You
you
know,
know, a couple of computer monitors, I mean, it's unfortunate that people do that sort of thing, but they do that sort of thing.
Right.
I'd rather have them leave it at the swap shop rather than leave it on the road next to the Hampton Cemetery.
Right.
But,
well, we
so I
get
guess
that too.
if we had if I had some more information on what you feel it was costing, I'd be more comfortable in making
Okay.
a change.
Yeah.
Well,
Well-
there was a time when we had volunteers.
Correct.
Man the swap shop.
Right.
And having volunteers to do that helps that whole activity work better.
Right.
So I don't know.
That doesn't cost anything.
Right.
That would be my first recommendation.
Yeah, maybe
is
it's
to-
only open on
is-
weekends.
Is to have, hikers or one of the groups that would enjoy doing that is to please come forward and volunteer to do that. A lot of towns have done away with it. There are quite a few that have done away with it, just because it is symptomatic to problems. We probably have a half a dozen to 10 people that come up there 3 times a day. 3 times a day just to go to the swap shop. And
Maybe they're good candidates to be the volunteers to man the swap shop.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a real interest in the swap shop and what comes
Or
in.
maybe there's a house that we're gonna inevitably
Yeah.
clean up
Yeah.
Right.
in the
Yeah.
future.
and up in Conway, they had to shut theirs down. I don't know if it's back open again, but they had to call the police a couple of times because people were hawking the back of your car when you were getting out to take stuff out, and they were getting into fights. It's like trying to park your boat in Wolfboro
Yeah.
on the weekend. Well,
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Good.
Thanks, Clay.
Yeah, this isn't Wolfboro.
No,
Dave Ladd, come on down. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see all of you.
Happy Post Labor Day.
yes, and
I've got one copy of this, I have some other, but I'll give it to the chairman. I do have my own copies here, so I can give you guys first. Just look at it. One, two, one, three,
I let him look at the entire package.
This is in reference to our meeting back at the beginning of the season, River Reach, on the cost of replacing the 12 slips. We discussed that, and at that time I did not have a cost factor to work with that would be that portion of the towns. And it's kind of straightforward. I put it out, and Winnipesaukee did the permit work on it, and they also bid on it, but they worked more than Jimmy, and I chose Jimmy over Winnie because of going over things. Number one, local. Number two is I work with Winnie all the time. They do all my major work at my unit, but they were sizable amount of money more. And I felt Jimmy could handle it. He and I met and went over what my requirements are to do the project, and he assured me that it would be handled properly. The town's only concern with that, which would be right next to slip number 1. We'll call it 0 and 1.
Mhm.
The 0 is the one next to the ramp, which is going to be replaced, I guess, and that's one of the things that Jimmy and I had to discuss, because we didn't want a conflict of 2 contractors being in there, one with a barge and doing stuff when Melvin Village, which would be, actually Melvin Village, Matt Young, I believe, got the contract on that. And he would have to coordinate, so because they usually have to put out sometimes silk fences in order to operate where they are. And we just don't want to have the conflict going on there. And of course, a lot of people will be looking to pull out their boats, but hopefully Jimmy's looking, starting right near the 1st of October. And a lot of people, a majority of people will be already out of the water. But, because we have island people on that dock facility. So we have to accommodate them that they get their boats out of the area in order for Jimmy to remove all the slips before he does the replacement. So that's the figure. I don't know where you gentlemen are gonna get the money, I know you spoke at different areas, and if it wasn't there to budget it or whatever, but I don't know if there's any discussion on that part.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, I think what we talked about when you were in the spring is if we have money this year left in December, then we can pay it out of this year's budget. If not, we'll certainly put money in and you can be reimbursed for it in next year.
Which is fine. I know that Tony understands that, Tony's the president. Basically, we're using all of our reserves to pay down what each individual will have to pay.
Mhm.
I think we're kicking about 6,000 of our reserves in to cover towards that. There's a savings of over 300 some odd dollars of monies per slip, so that's savings to
Good.
the town and to each individual on that. So it's just a matter of, I just want to get those numbers to you, because I know you work on your budget, so you gotta have that information available.
We've actually pared it down a little bit because back in June, the estimate was just the town share, $1,774.17. So
When-
thank you for having your sharp pencil.
When he came down on that price too, but, it was a good meeting of minds, I'll put it that way.
Oh, good.
So that's that project. If there's any questions on that one before I shift to the next.
Well, actually, you're in the middle. The landowner to the left of you, two landowners down, Jim just finished dredging and redoing their dock.
Right.
And then we have the boat ramp, so isn't it nice that
It's nice to
private
get all that
and
done
public
once.
got together?
Yes, it was good too. It's good for everybody in that area to get these projects out of the way instead of having all at once. The other item I'm bringing up is the perpetual one, goes back a number of years and keeps going on. I'll let what we have started. These are the
Yeah, I've seen these.
lanes on road where in the last picture in there, you want to look at very seriously. 3 times this year I've had to bail out, dig out the trench. I'm pulling about 5 to 6 yards every time out of it before it clogs up my culvert. And if it clogs up my culvert, that particular storm right there, it not only filled it, but it went through the culvert. And Mr. Flint just finished spending a lot of money. And you know how long it takes to get a dredge permit for the state of New Hampshire on Winnipesaukee? He had a barge that was there a whole day and a number of other days, digging out in front of his boathouse, digging out his boathouse, number one, and number two, getting rid of it over to the pier and then hauling it off. This river, when it starts up on Harvest Lane, on the lot that I'm not too happy about. I was planning board chairman. The lot happened to be a lot that was originally dedicated to recreational. After I went off the board, the new board came on. The person that owned that lot, Mosier, was able to convince the planning board it's not doing anything, it's not gaining taxes. So she convinced them to make it into a building lot. And that area, you can see that last one, that's where all the sand's coming from. And Jim and I finally located that. It's actually like an aquifer coming right out of the ground. And the water's coming from up towards Center Cove on another county road. And it's just pouring sand, and then it carries down through that lot. That lot was all filled with sand, number one, because it was for wetlands, but a house is on it today. It's owned by Kenneth Hatfield. Has been owned by other people before he bought it. So he wasn't involved in building the lot. But also, that's the problem where you had Harvest Lane's road was twice now. Once it was completely eroded at the end a couple of years back and had to be re-asphalted at the end. This time it took out the culvert at the beginning. I'm sure you're abreast of that on Harvest. You can keep these if you like. I've got them on the computer and on my phone. It's a perpetual problem that I feel all the sand, if it clogs mine up, and it takes a good 8 yards to clog mine up. And I've got a we just finished a couple years back, a new culvert in a 24-inch culvert. And when it fills up that settling basin on that side, then it goes through on another secondary settling basin that the state made us put in, like a skimmer. After it fills that one, it goes down around the corner, across Hodges Lot into Flint. And guess where that trench goes? It goes right through Flint's boathouse. So it fills up his boathouse. which is creating a constant problem. Back, a couple of years back, I complained to the town and to the state. State came along, as I mentioned in one of the other meetings, and put riprap all the way from my cemetery all the way down to Harvest Lane, and that eliminated any of the gravel and stuff that was normally compounding the problem that was coming from Harvest Lane. But we still have that problem, and it's just massive.
I have some interesting developments for you.
I've got pictures that have been going forever. I shoot it every time. It almost went to a legal lawsuit years ago. It started with my father back in the 40s. But Harvest Lane did not exist then. That was a nice settling area, like so many developments that were areas that absorbed all of these problems before they get developed and they speed up the flow of things coming down the river. So,
Yeah, I'll just go stream of consciousness. Jim mentioned this to us, when he comes in. He's located where it comes out, the river comes out of the ground. Of course,
that's what it is.
he was one of your neighbors. He grew up on Flint Street, so he has a working knowledge of it.
Yeah.
A couple of things that are going on. First of all, there's a watershed plan. As the Lakes Region planning comes around the lake, we put money aside this year in a warrant article, and there's a watershed plan that basically includes 7/8 of Tuftonboro. And Lakes Region planning has that on their radar. It's kind of unique is there's a town road, there's private property, there's a state road. Fortunately, through good luck, whether you designed it that way or not, your operation, when the water comes down and turns 90 degrees, it catches a whole lot of sand. So in effect, you're doing Tuftonboro, we're at least keeping some sand out of there. There have been, in other parts of the town, rain gardens and there's one on Lang Pond Road. There's several that Mirror Lake Association got grants for and put in. So what I've been able to do is to take people and show them, look what's been done, so there's some science involved here. I've talked to the state, and they're more than willing to do their share. I think they got right on it when we had a problem 2 years ago. Currently, we also have Lakes Region Planning doing a culvert study, and that same program does other things, but we kept it simple, number one. So, Jim has been keeping us appraised that this is a project that it involves a lot of moving parts. But the other thing is that through my meetings with the TAC Lakes Region Planning, stormwater in the last 10 to 20 years has, I don't want to say taken over their concerns, but it has grown. Partly as we have areas like Harvest Lane and your property, that when you were a young fellow and I was a young fellow, we hunted there. And there weren't people living there.
So is that last picture on the lakeside of the culvert?
That last picture actually is on Ken O'Hatfield's Harvest Lane, where the road where it comes across his lot, takes a quick turn, and then goes underneath Harvest Lane. That's actually where the culvert got yanked out and the highway broken on Harvest Lane. The back part of Keno's lot, basically, is where it's coming.
So that's uphill from that culvert that you're talking about?
Yes, it's like everything, it goes downhill. But it starts. We both, Jim and I, tried to find the problem. We both almost ran into where it was coming from by both within a couple of days of each other. I walked all the way up through Ken O'Hatfield's second, third generation Lane's End person. Still has a place at Lane's End, bought that place for retirement. And I walked up through his lot and went up through it, followed it, thinking that originally all that sand was coming out of the lot that was filled. But the last time when we complained years ago, they put riprap on the sides to prevent the fill that they just dumped in from it. And I said, and even Jimmy said, I don't think it's coming from his lot where the trench goes through, because the riprap seems to be solving that problem. And they diverted a little bit on the lot So I walked all the way up in the back corner of the lot is where that is, and I thought, what is this? I thought it was a culvert or something, and it actually was bubbling up.
It's a spring.
And it has to be coming from the backside of county down through towards that area. But right now, I'm full of sand right again now. Just with the little storms we've had lately.
Oh, yes.
So,
Well, not so little, we had a 2.5 inch on my rain gauge
Well,
a week ago Saturday.
it was perfectly dry the last 2 weeks.
And
It's not-
that-
So it just brought some more down. And luckily, I've got in there and utilized some of it. Took 4 yards out the other day and covered up some water lines that I had to repair. And it's nice to put sand rather than
Yes.
the
Yeah.
junk back on top.
so
I've used it
you
tonight.
stick a sign there that says free sand, right?
I think
Washed
the comment from the board here one time when I brought it in 5 or 6 years ago was, just think of all the washed sand that you're getting for free.
Yeah.
You know, I said, thank you very much.
Yeah, right, more than you need.
Right.
Well, since the last time that you were in and met with us on this issue, the state has done some work, Jim has done some work. Is it any better than it was? Or
No.
do you see no difference?
No, it's filled up twice since then.
Okay, so is it any worse than it
It's
was?
working towards its fourth right now.
All right, but I guess I'm trying to get a sense for,
Yeah,
is it going in the wrong direction?
Well, unless I dig it out completely again, you know, all I can say is that every time I've dug out 4 yards, it's filled up again.
So whose property is the source?
Hatfield.
Hatfield?
And does it come just at the edge, you know, the upper edge of his lot, and then perhaps the next lot up? I don't know if Jim and I really could weigh that out, you know. We just kind of talked about it, and I took the pictures, and, but we weren't together at that time. But it's, you can walk up through the back lot, and you can see it. It's
So the
just-
sand is washing out of the back of his lot?
I think so, yes.
It's probably a little bit of sand coming from everywhere, right?
Yeah, we just don't know the actual, probably, without more investigation.
Can
what the
I
source is.
pay you a compliment? I want to move along because we're running a little
Yeah.
late. But, you know, you've been vigilant and you've been cooperative with the town and you've served the town in many capacities. I can share with you, it's not forgotten by the Board of Selectmen. And, you know, you and I have had these conversations that now there needs to be stormwater easements and some legal issues when we're dealing with properties. So can you keep us posted and,
Yeah,
and stay right on it for us?
Yep, I will. I'll leave with the comment as Jim and I spoke about, and we know that there needs to be another settling basin someplace. That would be,
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
and one that could easily be cleaned out,
Mhm.
that would have access, that would solve probably the majority of this problem.
That's what he represented to us.
Jimmy Rhines and I met on this the last time that I came to the board, not this time, not this, but X number, when we went to do that culvert, the 24-inch culvert. I said, what I want to do is right on the edge of my property where it comes off Stockman, which used to be mine.
Mhm.
I said, it comes down across the state, across Stockman, then it makes that turn. And I said, I want to put a little settling agent right there. And Jimmy said, Dave, you know what that's going to involve with the state? You know, and it was they never give it to you. This is what was given to me by White Mountain Survey.
Mhm.
So needless to say, I'm where I am today. And Ambrose, between Ambrose and other contractors, have rebuilt my trench there with riprap 3 or 4 times at the cost of $8,000.
You probably would have been better off putting a 48-inch culvert, not letting the sand go into the lake, at which point the state would do something.
I just can't do that, because Mr. Flint's the one that's getting the brunt of it, and that's not right either.
Right.
No. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, travel.
So more work is necessary there, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully we can come up with a solution eventually, but keep working at it, that's all I can say.
All right, yeah.
And I'll try to keep you informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is HEB. I think he's waiting in the hallway. Lloyd Wood, just give your name to Karen for the record.
Christopher Foyer with HEB Engineers.
Hi.
Welcome to downtown Tuftonboro.
Just prepared a short agenda, so
Thanks.
Karen and I have
Thank you.
So we've talked previously, but just wanted to run through the series of events and answer any lingering questions you guys may have regarding the Sawon Road Bridge and Tuftonboro Neck Road Bridge. On July 5th, we assisted the town in submitting applications for construction to get into the state aid bridge program. As far as I know, those applications are still pending with the state. They do have some backlog in getting those in. But the result is likely that those bridges will be programmed for fiscal year 2025 and 26. They don't like to put two bridges from the same municipality in the same year, so that's the likely outcome if you haven't already received it.
Now, are you aware of this memo that we received in the last week?
Guys, get down to the bottom.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
As I understand it, I'm only a layman here, this one really needs to be pushed up, doesn't it?
Yeah, if
Between you and me.
it is, yeah. 15-ton load rating can be a problem. Because it'll limit the traffic that you can
It's
pass.
the busiest road in town.
Right. So that's going to be a problem. It does not accelerate you. The fact that it's now recommended to be load posted does not accelerate you in that program, unfortunately.
No, but what happens is the state speaks out of both sides of its mouth. Talks about how it's a little more serious. And oh, by the way, SB 38 has a second part to it. They're funding more bridges. But we can't do two bridges at once, and it's not our policy, and we can't do it before 2025. And I don't want to go public and annoy them or whatnot, but you know, the average citizen goes, why the run around it? Thank you for listening.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah, we're here to just guide you through those processes. So on July 31st, at the board's authorization, we submitted letters of intent for a hazard mitigation grant program. This is FEMA funds. They're actually related to the March snow event. But there's funding there, which was a 75% reimbursement program. We submitted that for the two bridges. Unfortunately, that program was only funded to about $300,000. We knew that at the time. And the LOI was not accepted for the program, but they recommended a different program. And getting the LOI in early sort of gets you in line.
Doesn't hurt, right?
It doesn't hurt. It didn't hurt at all. It didn't take very much to get those in. I didn't know if there were any lingering questions from that effort. Okay.
No.
So the program that they recommended was the FEMA PDM funding, which is also a 75% reimbursement program. However, those are nationally competitive. New Hampshire has not received a grant from that program since 2013. Typically, those applications are best when projects are shovel-ready, and the application is due in a month. So there's sort of a bunch of negatives associated with that. So I guess at this point, these projects aren't ready to be submitted to the PDM program, so we would not recommend for this year.
And one question on that. Reading the information that we've gotten from you before leaves me with the impression that this pre-disaster mitigation funding is something that you have to be able to demonstrate because of the size of the structure. It's creating, in the past, has created additional erosion, flooding, damage as a result of a storm incident that money had to be put in to correct.
Yeah,
Right.
they're all hazard mitigation projects, and both bridges are identified in your hazard mitigation plan as flooding issues. So that's the first requirement
Okay.
to even be eligible for any of these funds. But the PDM funds, while the town doesn't appear ready to submit for that, those are available every year. So that's a future option perhaps. What we do recommend is and there's a caveat associated with this, but pursuing the hazard mitigation grant program that's related to the July 1st storm over in Grafton County. the funds are available statewide, but they should be, it's going to be more, better funded, so it should be funded in excess of $1.5 million. Yes.
Our fire chief, our police chief, and our road agent have spent countless hours meeting with FEMA. Reference the storm. We had portions without electricity for 5 days between here and Sandwich. 171 utility poles were snapped. It was pretty exciting and significant. I won't use the word frustrating, and they're very careful not to say anything. But Carroll County was never deemed an affected area.
Okay.
And at what point do we need our fire chief, our police chief, and our road agent doing their regular jobs? The dilemma is that FEMA seems to know how to manipulate things like it has on the first one here. And this, maybe I'm
But you're saying these
misinformed.
funds are good statewide.
Well, if they are, let's go.
Those hazard mitigation funds, yes.
I don't mean to keep interrupting.
Yeah, and that damage was from the July 1st storm.
Yes.
So effectively, counties can be added to that storm if sufficient damages can be proven, if the county meets its threshold of damage. So if the town does believe that's happened, then it's something to be sought with FEMA.
Okay.
So does the letter from the state limiting weight fall under this BCA calculation?
No, it does not. No, they're looking for hazard.
The hazard that collapses,
Yeah, natural hazards, I guess, is the more.
so just flooding,
Yeah,
that's it.
basically.
Okay.
So the real question with this, before moving forward with any action, is has flooding been an issue at either of these bridge locations? And is there proof of damages caused by flooding, that flooding? If not, then
It's pointless.
there's pointless to try. Yes, correct.
Well, trivia. I don't know how you prove it, and I'd have to put you on to the chairman of the Conservation Commission. But where the water comes through Pine Swamp Brook, in other words, Melvin River, up on 171, if you were to make that a straight trench, the Sodom Road Bridge would be 10 feet underwater.
But it's not a straight.
But it's not because of the unique character of the Great Meadow.
Yeah, so if the road hasn't been closed because of flooding, or bridge overtopped, or scouring at the bridge that had to be repaired, if there's no proof of those damages, then it's not. There's no reason to move forward with this. But it was in your hazard mitigation plan for a reason, I guess. I don't.
Well, what was the closure had something to do with scouring? I mean, what was that all about? Or the weight limitation?
It has to do with deterioration of the endpoints on the beams.
So load posting.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Cracking and spalling
So that cracking and spalling is just
the
across
ends of the beams.
snow and,
Now,
No, it's just age and deterioration.
okay. So there's nothing in that we can attribute to
No,
large quantities of water?
no, I looked at it this morning as well, just to
now,
understand. what
up
the-
until this piece of paper, every year, if you look at, or every 2 years when they do the bridge, they talk about a void developing
They talk about void
on the
inspection.
Sodom Road Bridge. You know, I've read it, for 2 or 3 different times. And we ask our road agent to go check it, and, well, it's okay, it's manageable. I don't know if it's avoiding next to the bridge, or bridge abutment, or 10 feet away from it, but
So we're waiting for the 26, 27, is that what we're saying? Or whatever it is, 25, 26?
Yeah, and I guess my question still applies too, is Tuftonboro Neck, I don't know if that's ever, I don't think that's ever flooded.
No, it's the lake.
I know.
mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it has, the water levels come up.
I'm sure, but not over the road.
I can't recall in my lifetime that being flooded.
So it sounds like moving forward with pursuit of these funds, that would have sort of helped supplement the DOT, potential DOT funding, is maybe a lost cause, but the point at which we wanted to push through with these is that they speed up the New Hampshire DOT funding. I think it's on the back of this, so we can kind of run through this exercise. So that maybe we can think about that a little bit further, but because the
Have you used this strategy in another community close
Yes.
by? Whereabouts?
close by, we're using it in Gorham, New Hampshire right now. We've used it in Piermont, New Hampshire, Rumney, New Hampshire, Lincoln.
And have you been successful there in getting the bridge project moved up ahead of schedule?
Yeah, Gorham was not even in the program until last year,
Well,
and it's going to be constructed next year.
That's why I asked that. This, obviously your strategy works.
Right, yeah, and it's actually wasn't even a bridge to begin with either, so that was a whole other challenge. But because the FEMA funding, what it does is it has to be spent within 3 years, so it becomes the primary funder of the project, so 75% funding. DOT will say, okay, well, since it has to be spent within 3 years, we'd rather spend 20% of our funds on your project rather than 80% of your fund, 80% of the project in 10 years.
Now, if
So it's advantageous.
we do nothing, we build the bridge and then get 80% back, right?
In 10 years, yeah. Yes.
Okay, make sure the bridge doesn't fall down. If FEMA puts money toward it, that lowers the 80%, doesn't it, for the state?
Absolutely.
They'll end up paying us back. So
Yeah.
everybody wins, don't they?
Yeah, except I guess the federal tax. Though.
Yes.
But yeah, they pay 80% of the remaining 25% after FEMA, and that counts to 20% of the project. So the town ends up with only a 5% share in those situations.
Now, in Gorham, how many years were you able to move the project up?
It was not even in the program, it's being built next year.
And so within 2 or 3 years, you had,
So what's your suggestion, is to go ahead with a FEMA application?
I guess if there was the road agent perhaps, or somebody more familiar with the exact sites and the history of any damages at those sites. FEMA does have a new limited data module for their VCA calculations that we're able to work with less data.
is this something that you could take the lead in? Because what's happened is our road agent has called the appropriate people in the last 2 years 35 times and no response. She sends an email at 10 o'clock in the morning and we have a response by 2 in the afternoon.
But I think what he's saying is he needs more information to submit. I mean, there's information that we don't currently have in front of us.
Right.
And we don't want to create evidence, we just need to find evidence.
No, yeah, we've been pretty creative in the past, like
Yeah.
of looking at old town records,
What is it you need for information?
data. I mean,
Right.
cost of materials and labor for a specific storm damage
Right.
that we can attribute to a
Has-
certain
That you can
frequency.
tie to a particular crossing like that, right?
Crossing and a particular storm.
Mhm.
We can calculate the storm frequency based on historic rain
Well,
data.
I mean, if we were talking about the culvert on Bill Williams' piece,
Yeah.
it's on Sodom or on
Mhm.
Damer.
Damer.
I mean, we've got cost figures for that, when that flooded a
Yes.
few years ago, and we had to rebuild that.
Well, how do we have
We don't
cost
have
flooding
that.
when there's been no flooding on Sodom?
Well, we can't create it. I mean, it's either there or it isn't there.
It isn't there.
So,
It's a catch-22.
no, there's no 22s involved, we just don't have the ability to.
I mean, yet the state has demonstrated.
Is there, I mean, can you research to see if there's another avenue we could approach?
Yes, I mean, obviously we work for a lot of municipalities, so we try to bring in any additional funding sources,
Right.
knowing that there's limited resources, and there are, wildlife improvement funds available out there, but either of those situations don't really work for that sort of funding.
And do you see anything coming through? I mean, I remember get rid of the granite road cuts that was out there a few years ago, and they were moving the cliffs back from some federal bill that passed.
No,
I don't know if
it's-
there's anything coming up.
No, there is a little bit of additional funds for the Stadium Bridge program, but that program is just vastly underfunded for the amount of need that's out there.
However, SB 38 added millions of dollars to it. That's the other half that
Yeah.
indirectly
Yeah,
is
well-
beneficial to us.
While that legislation was developed, the projects identified for that spending were
We got
long.
70 grand, which is really
Yes.
nowhere near what we
Yeah,
need.
yeah, but he's talking about the other, there were two pools of money. Well, it was all surplus budget money, and DOT got this chunk of money, and a portion of it was to go to the bridge program, and a portion of it was to go back to the towns and cities, and the 70 grand that we got was our part of that portion, but there's still the bridge aid piece that was intended to accelerate work on the bridges. But that's not the same as saying a bridge that we have, that we think is going to be on their 2025 program is going to get moved to 2018.
No, yeah, it was a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
I have here from Karen, a copy of your emails dated, and it says revised grant and suggested letter to the state. Is there something that needs to be signed
Yeah,
by us? And
sort
how
of
much
next
will it-
step.
And how much will it cost?
If we want to leave the door open to pursuing those FEMA funds, there's a letter that we drafted pre-descent that says, ask the state, the Homeland Security to take that letter of intent that we submitted last time and please apply it to this near disaster.
To the July disaster.
Yes, so it just reserves your spot for a potential application.
And that's your recommendation, right?
It's, yeah, it's
No
an
brainer.
easy thing to do, and you don't even have to submit the application.
Mhm.
Applications for that won't be due until probably late winter, early spring. So we do have a period of time of if somebody remembers something or there's happens to be some.
I'm trying to think.
Is this an annual event or an annual
No, this one
filing?
only follows a disaster. A federal
So we've got another
disaster.
27 years to wait for a disaster to really make some impact.
There's one from 2011, Irene, and there's this one. So, but also the March snowstorm had those responses.
No. As an amateur, I'm trying to think. We have the state of New Hampshire that says, hey, you got a weight limit problem on your bridge. It needs to be replaced. And another part of government is saying, will you please research your files to see if, well, we haven't spent any money on that bridge.
It's not their responsibility.
Right.
It's ours. It's a town road. It's not a state road. So, I mean, we could put a warrant article together to spend $1 million to fix it. And, you know, that would be taking care of our responsibilities to fix that town road.
Yep.
I mean, what we're trying to avail ourselves of is some state funding, federal funding. I mean, I don't have a problem with, we should get as much federal money as we can. I mean, I think everybody in this room sends tax money every April off to the federal government. The more we get back, the better off we all are.
So it does make sense to send that letter to ask that we be considered for the July storm funding.
And that is the letter to Ms. Welch, reference Sodom Road Bridge and Tuftonboro Neck Bridge.
Yes.
And that's this letter here, correct? I authorized by the Board of Selectmen to sign it. Actually, it's all our signatures.
So it's awesome.
Yeah.
That would-
So,
Just yeah.
all right, so I'll make a motion that we submit this letter requesting that our previous letters of intent be considered for DR 4316 Hazard Mitigation Grant Program.
I'll second
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Now, the next piece of correspondence we have is a letter of agreement. And is this something new or a,
No, that's a revised version of
okay?
our efforts. The completion of our efforts are dated, so I just wanted to get a new complete
Yeah.
update on
In
it.
3 sentences, what is the difference and how much does it cost?
The difference is it was pushed back 3 weeks in time, and the cost hasn't changed since last time. However,
that's to do the
the
benefit
need for
cost
this,
analysis.
the need for this, right, is in question right now. If there isn't the data to support the benefit cost analysis, then we shouldn't do the benefit cost analysis.
So it makes sense to me that we would do a little spade work on our end and see what records we might have. And if we don't have any records that can be tied to these storm events, then the benefit cost analysis becomes very easy, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
And pointless.
Right.
So I know we have had some washout behind the wall at the bridge up here. I don't know, and we incurred some costs in repairing. Whether there are records that are sufficient to even tie it to storm events, and whether that washout is associated with just general erosion or elevated water levels with respect to specific storms. Those are questions that we at least need to look at and say, maybe, and if the answer is maybe, then it might make sense to hire your firm to look at all the records and put a case together for us.
Now, on Exhibit A, I see that the funding assistance is a lump sum of $1,750.
Yes.
Has that already been paid, or is that going to be owed at some point?
You know, if we sign that contract, that they'll charge us $1,800 to do this benefit cost analysis and put it together in a form that would be submitted for the hazard mitigation grant, correct?
Yeah, I'm suggesting that you don't sign that. If you happen to find anything over the next few months, then we can revisit that.
Yeah.
Because the applications aren't due until late winter, early spring, so we have until then to try to figure this out.
Sounds
Good.
good.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for coming down today.
Travel safe, my friend.
Will, thank you.
Next, Sioux Week Cemetery. Thank you for waiting. How are you doing?
Our cemetery budget is in process. We had a meeting last week to get it ready, and then several things happened after the meeting, so.
That's the way it happens, isn't it?
So we're meeting again tomorrow night to do the budget again. But we're doing the fence out here. You may see there are stakes out there on the cemetery. We're going to get the new fence put in the next couple of weeks. I reviewed the location with Jack Parsons. The actual cemetery layout comes right into the pavement,
Right.
but we're not gonna take it, no.
I had a citizen make a suggestion to me that in the winter, where we push the snow and it breaks the fence. And that citizen suggested, what about putting the posts in a sleeve so that during the winter, those posts are pulled up and stored and not bent over. I don't know what the cost is. I just passed that on as an interesting
Say that's a
citizen.
possibility, but I'm not sure it's a good idea to be in the practice of piling snow in the cemetery, because there will be burials there, and monuments, and
There's no way we can predict if somebody's gonna wanna open a grave in January as opposed to just in
well, they're not gonna open them in January. We don't allow that,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
once there's snow and frost in the ground. They're not supposed to be out there. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but
So there are no wintertime burials?
unless you're sprinkling ashes.
Thank you.
So the new fence is going to be a little closer this way than where it is now. we need to open up the stone wall next to the gate so that there's access there for undertaker's equipment to get in from the main entrance to come this way. Instead of the last couple of years, they've had to go across the lawn here to get in there. We've taken rails out of the fence to open up a place.
So would that be an opportunity to utilize the paved portion of the cemetery and put the access out here? As opposed to taking the wall down?
No, because, well, unless you'd lose too much, you'd lose too many parking places doing that.
Well, you don't use it every day. I mean, your property, there's a cemetery property runs across our back pavement. And we plan on putting a fence back there.
Yes, right.
I mean, the front fence
It's about 5
replacement.
feet closer than what it is now.
Right, and would another gate there be a,
Well, there is a gate, there is a chain there now, which will stay there. But opening it up over there will allow the equipment to go the routes that were planned
okay,
when the cemetery was laid out.
before they had backhoes and excavators and dump trucks and all that stuff?
So, it looks like we have enough money in our budget to open up that
They
wall.
hand dug the graves like they're supposed to.
It'd be no problem.
And then we'd have grave diggers in town, and that would be,
Job security.
great.
It'd be a long walk to carry the casket, however.
Well,
The middle section out in there, there's places where you can't actually get to it with equipment the way you are supposed to. So just opening that wall will do that. We have to move one bench that's out there, which we've already talked to the owner and made arrangements for that. But it looks like we have enough money in our budget this year to do that. We're not gonna build a road, it's still gonna be all grass. It's just be an opening in the wall where the equipment can go in.
And I know last year you were working on properly marking the lanes out there so that burials weren't done in the lanes and that access to the grave areas was by the lanes. Are those all now marked?
We have them marked. It's not a permanent solution. We need permanent markers. In other words, those blue reflectors are the markers.
Yeah, so what you need a little granite monument, a quarter post or something, yeah.
Yeah, we'll need something. But we're managing. As long as we have a sexton who is contacted before there's a burial, then it works fine, because there are ways to get where they need to get. They're not always obvious. And they can't just drive across like they used to. We've just gotten word from our Jessica, who does the stone repair work, that she's not going to be able to do it this year. So that actually frees up the money to
Do
open
this other work.
open
yeah.
the wall. There's no other construction other than just, filling in where the stones get removed, filling in with some gravel or something. Since we've gotten some cemeteries declared abandoned, we now have authority to make repairs to them. And two high on our priority list were the Thomas Cemetery down at the end of Tuftonboro Neck Road. There's been difficulty with the gate, opening and closing the gate, and the fence is a wooden picket fence that needs maintenance. Charlotte Allen has gone out and gotten donations from people down on Tuftonboro Neck, and they're going to be paying the full cost to take out the fence and put in a new The second one is the French cemetery down here on 109A that we really want to get fixed before the state starts doing the bridge works.
And have they figured out how to do the bridge work without impacting the cemetery?
Yeah,
Last I heard, they're not concerned about the stone.
well, they don't have to be now because it's all down. You know, it's-
Can you guys speak really loudly while the lawnmower is?
The fence there now is collapsing, and you can see that the granite stones are dislodged. That's because the wall underneath is dislodged because of the trees, the pressure from the roots and the trees themselves. So it's not a couple $1,000 job to go in and just reset the slabs that we were hoping. It's a $40,000 job to get heavy equipment in to take out the trees, take the wall, everything apart, and rebuild it. And that would include grinding down the stumps, doing all of the trees, and grinding all of the stumps so that it's a nice finish. We were working on our budget and, does this go to CIP? Does it go to a warrant article? Does it go in the budget and all of that? And suddenly this week, a private citizen came forward, husband and wife came forward and have made us a donation that will cover that cost. So we are creating a trust fund, cemetery trust fund with the trustees of the trust funds for private donations for cemetery projects. So that donation will go in there and we'll use that and get the French cemetery done. I don't know yet if we can do it this fall or if it'll be next year, but we know we can do it without impacting the budget.
Was that donation 40,000?
Did you say it covered? The donation covers it, yes.
40,000.
It's actually a little more than that. The condition of the donation was that it be anonymous and that it be used for cemetery projects. They understand that it would be used for that one.
Now, does the town have to create this fund? Does the town have to create the fund, or can the cemetery trustees just create a fund?
I think the cemetery trustees and the trustees of the trust funds together can create it
Without a vote of town meeting?
without a vote of town meeting. It may have been enabled by the warrant article last year, or it may not be required to have a warrant article. We're investigating that. Peter's making some phone calls today to verify just how we.
I only asked the question, we want to make sure we do it right,
I know.
Because it's, we've been there before, we've made assumptions and gone a direction, and it turns out that we're at odds with the RSAs, and so,
We haven't cashed the check.
yeah, that's right. Okay,
So,
great.
yeah, Peter's making phone calls today, and we'll make sure we handle that correctly. So,
Well, it must be encouraging to you that we have people that have enough of an interest in ensuring that these cemeteries get repaired, restored, preserved, that they're willing to come forward with some substantial contributions to.
it's huge, because there's so much work that we can do. We've had Jessica doing $750 worth of work a year. That's the tip of the iceberg as far as maintaining stone, repairing stones.
And that goes on every year. I mean, I look at the ones at Ham Cemetery. I mean, it just happens every year.
Yeah, and, but that's another reason to abandon them, is to make it legal for us to actually get in there and do work on them. So that is all I have.
Great. Good. So we will know whether or
It's
not
good news
we will
upon good news.
article pretty quickly.
Right, right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keep those cards and letters coming.
I just have a question. Does the town have to have a public hearing to accept a donation this large or not?
If the town were accepting it, you could take it in as payment of taxes.
Like we did,
Okay,
like
but because it's the cemetery, we don't have to have,
they're gonna research that, Mary.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything required, because if you had a private cemetery on your property and you wanted to donate money for care for it, you could do that.
Mhm.
And it would go right into a perpetual
Oh,
care
I
fund.
see. Oh, see.
It's certainly clear in the RSAs that for the governing body to accept any unanticipated revenue, whether it's grant, donation, what we have to hold a private, a public hearing. But
Mhm.
this is maybe a
It's like
different,
scholarship.
a different
We can
world.
take scholarship money and put it in the fund and pay it out, as long as it's,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just,
the fund has to be defined and explained when you set it up. It has to be clear what it's for and where the money comes from. And you can't have, you have to make clear whether it's a public money or it's private money. That's the biggest thing.
Well, and the other thing, just to sort of clarify what Bill was saying, if it materially affects the budget, then we have to have a public hearing. But, and that's why we had a public hearing on that money that came in on the bridge fund. or
The SB
highway-
38.
The highway fund, because it's gonna materially affect the budget that was voted on if we were to spend it this year.
I don't believe that's the condition. I think it's anything in excess of $10,000. That's what I was, okay?
Well, we'll have to have that discussion going forward. 'Cause
They'll research it for us.
Yeah.
I think it's,
It's a nice problem to have.
What the town voters' expectation is.
nobody's going to say no. Let's put it that way.
It's under 10,000.
Yeah.
I just saw the RSA in the Wolfboro.
Any amount and from any place over $10,000?
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah.
It needs to be researched, because things
And,
like,
and I will,
National security
and that's, this one we did this morning had a special provision in the bill that allowed all towns, even those that haven't adopted the provisions of the RSA, to accept the money.
to use that mechanism.
Right.
Yep.
Now, it is it is an RSA that this town adopted, I don't, way back when it first became available. But anyway, that's, I don't have the specific,
We'll keep working.
specific language there.
You know what I'll say.
But
We'll get her
yeah,
done.
that's right.
Let's make it as difficult as possible for people to give us money.
Okay, we're ready to move on to review and approval of minutes. First item is the 4 PM meeting, Monday, August 28th. Any corrections, gentlemen?
I didn't see that.
I have nothing to change.
So I'll make a motion that we accept those minutes.
Second?
It's been made and seconded, no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next, our Selectmen's non-public meetings, August 28th. It started at 5:43 PM. I have no changes.
Move approval?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay. Next, we move on to the red folder, signature file. Notice of appointment to Warren Hadley for the Office of Planning Board. Term expires 2018. Is there a motion?
And that's an alternate, as an alternate to the planning board.
An alternate member of the planning board, yes.
So I will, so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Our second item of business is we signed for the Starbuck family to right to burial. And we approve those. However, they need to be revised for the mailing address revisions. So if you want, this can be done in one motion. Move to approve revised rights of burial for lots E55 and E53-54.
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Next is continued business. Is COLA, correct?
Right.
Okay. Open the discussion.
I looked up information at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website on Consumer Price Index, which is what the COLA is designed to encompass. The percentage change in the CPI in the Northeast region in the last 12 months through July of 2017 is 1.3%.
I had 1.2 working on those numbers.
Oh, if you take it from this table and you work it, it comes out to 1.2 and change, so.
Shall we shorten this down to what it really ought to be?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion that this COLA for the upcoming budget year is 1.2%.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
We will, I think, revisit the steps when we get the budgets. I hope.
As I understand it, the COLA automatically adjusts the steps, correct?
Well, we've earlier this year have talked about disconnecting the COLA from when somebody receives their step increase. So that the COLA applies for the whole year and the step increase would be applied at the service anniversary. Is that, I think that's what you would.
I think that's part of it, and the other part being that a step increase happens when you're actually improving your skills. You know, you've prevented us from having to hire extra.
Yes,
help.
I think you led a very healthy discussion that a merit increase is not me, the employee, just showing up and doing the bare minimum like I have for the last 3 years. It's documenting that the employee has brought something else to the table that assists the town. And if I remember correctly, Clay came in with a sample folder where you list those things. And I think that on more than one occasion, you mentioned to the department heads that before merit increases are given, there will be be some type of review. How many classes have you been to? What new project did you take
And
on?
the whole goal is to manage the workforce so that it's not expanding all the time to handle new work as it comes in, but the workforce we have is capable of handling all the work that comes in. So, yeah, disconnecting COLA from
From the merit increase.
step and merit increase would be, and I think moving the steps to the anniversary makes a lot of sense, so.
But that's something that we need to do as they start the budget, because that will affect how they do the budgets.
Right. So probably, I guess my recommendation, we voted on the COLA,
Yes,
is we can give that to our department heads
yes.
and have them do the separation. If they're planning on giving somebody a step increase or a merit increase, that needs to be separately noted, so we know what we're doing.
Now, for budget purposes, if it's going to be the policy this year that the merit increases in the month of your anniversary date, that affects their budget too, doesn't it?
It does.
Doesn't take a lot, I mean, it's not like we've got hundreds of employees, so it's gonna take a little bit of work, but.
Yes, right. The one thing that all the department heads have asked is that we make that decision early on,
Right.
so they're doing those computations as they're doing the budget.
So are we prepared to act on that issue
I think
today?
so.
Okay.
Prepared?
Huh, I think so, yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we direct our department heads to make a calendar of all the merit increases or step increases that they intend to give over the year for each employee, so we know how that impacts the budget.
And that the step increase would
I have no
be
problem.
coincident with their service anniversary.
I'm sorry, yeah, and any increases or step increases are gonna be concurrent with their anniversary of employment.
I know, is there a second?
Second.
You're speaking to the choir here, because I've always operated under that. There might be some discussion. I liked your suggestion when you first became a selectman, that on some issues like this that affect a lot of people, we make the decision over 2 meetings so people can get back to us and we can listen. Do you want to vote on that today, or do you want to table it for 1 week?
I'm okay tabling it.
That's fine, yeah.
You know,
Do you think there's gonna be some input?
I'm sure there is going to be, so, and it's not, I'll tell you right now, I'm a proponent of that, so.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Okay.
So we'll table the
Okay,
motion.
yes.
Yep.
That was, Selectmen's update.
As I mentioned, can I go first?
Absolutely.
As I mentioned at our Friday meeting when there were no people here, other than a few of us, Parks and Rec.
Joe was here.
Joe was here. That's right. He was in town.
Representing the public.
The Parks and Rec Department meeting went pretty well. We did our budget pretty well established. There's a fall event coming up in October 21st at the school. Fall Festival. I'm not sure that it's come up with a name yet. There was a discussion of whether or not Parks and Rec was going to participate in it or sponsor it, or how that was going to work. We'll back to that. The butterfly garden at the school needs some direction, so if anybody's got some ideas on how to handle that, that would be nice. We did change the lifeguard, the proposed budget changes the lifeguard coverage from some of the time being 4 days and some of the time being 2 days to all of the weeks that the beach is open, we'll have 5 days of coverage. It's not 7 days of coverage, which would preclude us from having much liability, but it's a better than the system that we currently have. And you'll see it didn't adversely impact the budget because we were able to adjust a couple other line items that, as we went along, and it was a $1,500 increase in the lifeguard line, but we saved more than $1,500 in the rest of the budget.
As I understand, the lifeguard issue is we're kind of half sheep and half dog. The people who are in that business say you either have lifeguards
Right.
or you don't.
Well, from a liability standpoint, you either have lifeguards or you don't. If you have them sometimes, then the expectation on the part of the public is that there's a lifeguard, so you can drop my kids off or whatever. If there's signage that says there are not lifeguards at this beach, then you put the public on notice that we're not involved in the safety of your children at this beach. So we are sort of half sheep and half dog, I guess, if that's the.
I may have some information for you on that to solve the problem. I'll do more research.
The other item that came up, and we talked briefly about it on Friday, is the revolving fund. And I've got a financial statement here from the revolving fund. And I'm not sure, and I think the discussion has to start, but I'm not sure it's what the intention of this revolving fund was meant to be. It was an in and out fund, so if they took in some funds for swim lessons, they could buy
Equipment and pay for the people.
yeah,
Yep.
they could move money around a little bit. But now that they're in the event business, we've got a total incoming revenue of $11,392 against expenses of $5,758 and an accumulated cash asset of $15,242. So it's getting beyond the in and out level, really. It's almost like we're running two sets of books.
The scope of this fund is creeping into other
And
areas.
So do we change it? Because I think the other part of the discussion was the concert series, which we picked out of the air as one of them. This was the first year that we had the concert series. We brought in $3,700 at the beach.
And this is free roll donations, correct?
Yeah. So you brought us $3,700 and you had $1,300 worth of expenses. So it's a good moneymaker for Parks and Rec and all of the programs that the children have. What happens when you do it again next year and everybody that heard about it this year didn't go, decides to go, and you get $10,000 worth of revenue, and you've got $6,000 worth of expenses. All
What
this
is the
is
scholarship
becomes.
fund?
I'm sorry?
What is the scholarship fund?
Yeah, no, I'm getting to that. So should we put a line item in the budget for Parks and Rec for event expenses and take that revenue out of their revolving fund and put it into whatever, the trustees, the trust fund, or whatever? So we need to start having that discussion.
There's a parallel for exactly what you're talking about. Road signs on private property, the police department with special events, and the cemetery, when we buy stones and then get reimbursed. There are 3 revolving accounts there, for lack of a better word. They legally, and Diane's right on top of it, and she's eagle eye about it. So there is legally the mechanism to do exactly what you're talking about.
Well, this is technically legal the way it's working now. I'm just wondering whether it's workable from the town standpoint and from the people's standpoint. I mean, the Parks and Rec has in the past and will this year as well, has made the decision of how much of that $15,000 they're going to take out, give to the trustees and the trust fund for scholarship purposes.
Yes.
That's a volunteer board, and I think they're all the most wonderful people in the world, but is that an activity that we feel they should have, or that the town wants them to have?
Yes.
I don't think it was foreseen in the passage of this revolving fund.
And there's no malice in your approach here.
Not at all, but if they had $20,000 from the events, it starts to be that they're managing money that maybe the selectmen are supposed to be saying what happens.
Sure.
Or maybe The budget, somebody higher up the food chain needs to say, this is how much money is coming out, this is how much is staying in. And part of the reason why there was a discussion about how much they were leaving in their bank account was how much is it going to cost to properly do the concert series and a couple other things next year.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, we are running 2 sets of books. We're better off with another line in their budget for events.
It's kind of a nice problem to have, like her donation in the summer.
Yeah, no, I think that it's like the old home days. That started out with a few some families showing up, and now it's an event. I mean, it's a whole weekend. And that,
Well, will you continue to look into it and negotiate some
yeah, that's generated
suggestion?
$3,100 this year.
Yes.
It starts to add up.
Yep.
So I'd like to bring it to a discussion at our board. Now that you can think
Well,
about it.
you're in a perfect spot because you're also the liaison representative to the budget committee if they have any.
Oh, right, I think that's it.
Okay.
That was it for me. I did Parks and Rec.
Bill?
Okay, CIP met last week, met with Fire and Rescue and reviewed their submissions on the schedule, and in their request for this coming year is a piece of replacement fire apparatus for an engine that will be 20 years old in 2018. There are a number of other submissions that they have, and I think you've seen the package of stuff that they put in.
I saw the whole package. but
Right.
What did you think this year's impact was going to be? Did you have a number in mind?
I want to say on a 5-year lease purchase on a unit is like $116,000 a year. That's the,
So it's a little over $500,000.
Yes.
For the piece.
yeah, 580 is the total cost of that. Most departments and submitters have submitted projects. We still do, are waiting on project submissions from some areas, so.
Did the highway department submit for a dump truck?
Not, right. Well, we talked with Jim on Friday when he was in here.
Well, we
So-
talked to them a month ago too, so it's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of.
his submissions, highway department submissions have not gone in yet. So, CIP meets again next Wednesday. And I apologize, I don't have the submitters who are going to be attending the meeting in front of me at the moment, but, so I think we're off to a good start on the year. Switching hats, milfoil, the state completed their fall milfoil survey last week. And we have active, healthy patches of milfoil in all the usual spots. And contractor will be coming in beginning next week to harvest in Winter Harbor, in the Winter Harbor Basin, and at 19 Mile, at the condo docks at 19 Mile and by Union Wharf. That's all I have.
You had a planning board meeting, how did that go?
And we did have a planning board meeting. It went fine. We had
I mean, officers elected.
we did not elect officers, so Jack is still the acting chairman.
We were up to a full board.
We have a full board. And we had a meeting with Mike Izzard from Lakes Region Planning Commission to review progress and next steps as it relates to the master plan review. And so that is moving forward. no significant shakes out of that.
Karen,
Mm-hmm.
I got a copy of a note from Mark Hazlitt, 4 Union Wharf Road. Asked for someone to take a look at a culvert near his property as the runoff is going into his garage. Has someone spoken to him?
I don't remember. Did you already give that to me? Already?
I'll read the memo. Mark Hazlitt, 4 Union Wharf Road, asked that you take a close look at the culvert near his property as the runoff goes into his garage. I explained that Lakes Region will be looking into the culverts on each public town road, which includes this road. But please let him know, I let him know I would pass this concern along to you.
Yeah, so that's dated, right? That's a little bit,
Yeah,
okay.
Monday,
Yeah.
August 28th.
Yeah, okay.
Now, has the road agent been notified?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you know if he's handled it or not?
I think it just knows that they have the culvert assessment. I'm not sure if Jim did any action on it or not.
Okay, could you find out and get back to us? I mean, if there's something that's affecting his building.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing is that, I'll read this. On Friday afternoon, 8th of September, I had a conversation with Gina Lassard, chairman of the rec committee. She's received a report and pictures from Tuftonboro Central School of some repairs needed for the asphalt handicap ramp that leads from the parking lot out onto Davis Field. This is in the area of the butterfly garden. I went and viewed the area. The handicap sign is bent and needs to be repositioned. The pavement to the ramp is getting old and I think may be needed to be replaced in the future. The immediate need is for both areas on either side of the ramp. They are washed out and they need immediate repair. Do we pass this on to the road agent?
Yeah.
Davis Field. Gina wasn't sure if it's...
Is it Davis Field or is it on the school parking lot?
Yeah. Who's brought
It's my understanding that it goes out onto Davis Field.
Yeah, but is it on the school property
Probably
or is it on the town property, I guess is the question.
And the school needs to take care of their property, I need to take care of ours.
Can we have the road agent look into it, or is it someone else needs to do it?
We can, but I think it's, and maybe you can figure out whose property it's on.
So the question is, where is the boundary between
It's pretty
the school
close to the
property?
edge of the pavement,
Is it? Okay, so it
so it
may
probably straddles.
But
Yeah.
the signage is the town, is the school, so it's not ours, we don't have handicap parking
Right.
signs at the school.
Well, I brought it to the attention.
And she
What is
hopefully Gina's brought it to the attention of the principal of the school as well.
the school came to her,
Oh, did they?
yes. So, where does this go from
So
here?
I think have Jim take a look at it. If it's on town property, then that's deal with it.
I'll bring this up now. On the 6th of September, I attended my TAG meeting in Belmont and spoke, and we had a presentation from Elizabeth Strachan. She is with New Hampshire DES Resources Division. She made a presentation on the FY 2017 State Clean Diesel Grant Program. The state has received a share of the Volkswagen class action lawsuit that settles the VW illegal exhaust emissions law. The state of New Hampshire has received money that will reimburse cities, towns, etc., up to 35% in the investment of older diesel-powered vehicles, tractors, buses, fire trucks, etc. The vehicles, and I don't know about this, need to be circa 1997 to 2000. They must be stripped of all useful equipment, the frame must be cut in half, and the engine block must have a 4-inch hole punctured into it. And it's similar to the gas guzzler act of a few years ago. They had to destroy the car. In other words, it can't be repaired and given to somebody else to use. My first response was that Engine 2 fire truck met all the requirements and were on. The grant cannot be used for any listed CIP project in the last 3 years. However, there may be a silver lining. The current six-wheel dump truck owned by the town is a diesel. I believe it's a circa 97 to 2000 Freightliner. It has never been listed on any CIP list. A replacement vehicle with plows and special body is initially estimated at $169,000. The $35,000 reimbursement is $62,000 and change, and funding could be used for that equipment that's dedicated for equipment dedicated to maintaining our local highways. The grant is specifically intended to be used for this purpose. It meets both conditions. Grant application deadline is the 15th of October. Do you want to investigate it?
Sure, but I think what we talked about the other day, recollection is that truck is a 2000, not a 1997,
Well,
right?
Yep.
So if it's 1997 or older, and this is newer than 1997, it sounds to me like on the face of it that there's no opportunity. I mean, is this a guideline? Is it a, we want it maybe older than 97, but I'll be happy to look into it further. And I'll take that one on.
Get
But
the application. I mean,
yeah,
it should.
There are-
go on.
As I went over my notes, there were some waivers, but there is some paperwork, and that's her name. And
okay.
if you want me to make a copy of that for you, I will. Actually, that came out of here.
Yeah. So,
And how much money did they have? Does it say?
It's 35,000
35%.
of
Yeah, we're just
purchase.
that's our number, but what are they, because we're gonna apply, let's say we are granted $35,000. We still have to go to the town meeting.
35%.
The purchase price of the truck is approximately $179,000.
Okay,
They will reimburse us 35% of that. If that's the actual figure, that would be $62,650.
okay, but we still need to go to the town
Yes.
and
Right.
get the rest of the money.
Yes.
So, it's a matter of whether or not they have enough money to sit around and wait until March for us to decide.
Well, that's for the next year. Cleaning of buildings, we spoke to Jack about. Anything else on the Selectmen's input? Correspondence? We talked about the Diesel Emission Act. 9/11. Dear Selectmen, please be advised, it is fine for Lisa Beveridge to have a beer fest again this year. She would like to have it on 1/27 from 12 to 3. I've relayed the day and the time to Chief Thompson, Chief Shigori, and Jack Parsons. This is signed Karen. Any issues with?
I think
This is at the
at the town beach, right? So, in my view, it needs to be okay with the police department, fire and rescue, and as always, we need a certificate of insurance from her with the town as a named insured for the event.
Okay.
But,
Same as last year, right?
so, yeah, but again, we don't know that there might be any issues from the police department or the fire department at this point, right? You
I
sent
have
them
been
out.
told by the fire department there were issues, but they're going to speak to them individually about it, or speak to her individually about it. Nothing major.
All right, so let's,
Provisional exception?
yeah, let's, can we put that on follow-up for our next meeting? I mean, obviously, the event's great. It's great to have additional events in town, but if there are issues in an event, we need to make sure whatever those issues are get dealt with before the next one, because typically something that's an issue doesn't go away by itself. If it's a little bit of an issue, the next time it's more of an issue, and so whatever those things are, it may be that we need to sit on and meet with her and kind of go through all this stuff. And I'm glad that she's getting her oar in the water early so that we don't, we're not scrambling at the last minute to deal with the whole thing. And obviously, if she wants to publicize it, she wants to be in a position well in advance. But yeah, I think it makes sense to do a follow-up on this under continuing business.
I can ask Adam to talk to her and then go from there.
And also, I think we need to have Andy's input.
I asked him if he had any, I emailed him and asked if he had any issues, if so, let me know, and he did write back, so I assume.
Okay, it's not the
I'll
same as
check.
that there aren't any, right?
Right.
I didn't hear back, so.
Yeah.
This is from Dan Barnard. Greetings, friends and correspondents to the Tuftonboro Times. Labor Day has come and gone. Our thoughts are turning to the fall edition. The deadline for articles is a little more than 3 weeks away, Friday, September 29th. The publication should be in mailboxes by October 14th. I know we've all had a busy summer. I hope a good one. I hope you can take a few minutes and help us out putting out another good issue. I welcome pictures, stories, etc. Is it my turn or your turn? For the Tuftonboro
We
Times.
take turns?
Yeah, we do. Well,
Jesus.
you want to do it?
Well, it's my turn, I'll cowboy out.
Okay.
you know?
They didn't tell you about this.
No, that's
You
another
ran
one
for
to tell
office?
me about. So when is it due?
The 29th?
This
October?
month?
Yeah,
Oh,
Friday,
no,
29th.
September.
Okay.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah. Thanks for volunteering.
During the
If you
meeting,
don't want to do it, I'll do it, but.
No, I don't mind, I'm just being I've been here too long, this one, I get a little grumbly.
All right.
during the
I have
meeting,
a bunch of other issues so I can see what the style is and kind of
That's right.
general
I think
demeanor.
they are online.
Make sure you really get the author's voice.
Right, right.
They should be
I'm
online.
not signing it, just so you know. Go
Aren't
ahead.
they online archived?
What's that?
Yeah, it is.
during the meeting on August 14th, Bill Stockman shared that the Wildwood Association is doing some road work on Canaan Road-Wildwood Road section and needs to obtain the town's approval before working on its section of the Class 5 road. The estimate to fix the Class 5 section of road is $2,400, and they're looking for any help from the town in regards to this expense. Karen says, I texted Jim Bean. Even though there is not any extra money in the budget, he feels that the town should contribute to the road. Please advise Karen.
Is that, so the Wildwood section is class 5?
Yes.
Okay, so we are.
They're
technically
850
responsible.
feet. They're technically town road. Road. Now, it's my understanding this will be in next year's budget. Karen, what's your understanding?
I just don't know that
They
part.
were doing it this year.
I thought it
I
was
thought it was
this
this
year.
year that they were doing the work.
Can you
He
clarify?
needs your permission to do it, A, he said, and then B, wants, if the town can contribute to it, great. They're gonna do it regardless if they get your permission to do so. That's all
I
understood.
know a couple of years ago, 2 buses got lost and did considerable damage. Wildwood stepped up and did the major portion of repair. I think we put a token amount in. The amount escapes me, but it's been a cooperative effort over the years. It's a unique situation.
So should I confirm that they're allowed to do it, but we just need to know when payment would be needed? Is that?
Yeah, I don't think Jim Beam's got any money in his budget.
Right.
So where's it gonna come from? It's gotta come from the highway department budget. So it would have to come, I would say, yeah, they can do it, but maybe they should limit what they
The
do.
grant money.
Yeah, we could use some of that grant money.
You get the information and get back to us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is
Sit
from,
down.
this is from you, Bill. Did you talk about milfoil?
Yep, I did.
This is from Glenn Cordelli. The future of county farm property public hearing is scheduled at the county complex, September 16th, starting at 1 p.m. There's a Tuftonboro location in a North Conway
The
section.
future of county property, what is that
There's a
amount
new
to?
committee.
It's what is the future of the county property known as the county farm? In reality, it is more than a farm comprising of 894 agricultural acres and building. At one time, it's a visible and viable part of the county's agricultural community, raising livestock, gardens, but today it's a shadow of that past. While county government is uncertain about its future, they agree that it's a valued county asset and all options will be explored. The attached links give you some idea of what we're talking about. So,
And there are 3 hearings scheduled,
yep.
right? October 16th at 1 p.m. over at the county complex. I'm sorry, September 16th. September 23rd at 2 o'clock at the Tuftonboro Library, and September 28th at 7 p.m. at the Gibson Center in North Conway.
The other correspondence is just the normal meetings and technical information that we get.
Well, it's nice of Representative Cordelli to keep us fully informed. Because
Okay.
that certainly isn't informative at all.
Yes. Other
What the
business.
motivation might be is still foggy. I mean, they obviously don't want to talk about the $175,000 worth of timber they've taken off that property in the last 10 or 15 years, so. Don't get me started. So
We already
not
have,
certainly
sir.
we're being
Aye.
effectively represented when we get an email from our representative. And where's Marsh and all this sort of thing? He's one of our representatives for our town that has 2 or 1.5. And they don't see fit to come over here and visit and tell us what's going on. So
I'm glad somebody passed along
I'm glad they went that far.
the notice of hearings on it, absolutely. So, you know, maybe you can go to the hearing and bring up, you're more familiar with this stuff
I'm
than
not sure
most
how
of
helpful
us
I'll be, but
Well-
I'm certainly going to make it to at least one of
Yeah.
them. Because
Any other business? I see a hand up.
I have one.
it's a shadow of its former self because of what they have done, not because of what the farm has done.
You have no place to go today, right? So we're gonna extend the meeting a little bit longer. I went out and talked to the lawnmower people already, okay? And we've been going through this for several years. And when the lawnmowers come up on the side, it just drowns everybody else. They're gonna finish up this afternoon, but in the future, I kinda like to coordinate. I mean, this is important, and the grass may be too. But look at, if we're having a meeting here at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we have to strain to listen to what everyone's saying around here, it just doesn't serve the purpose. So I'm just telling you what I did. Maybe this kid I met, you can talk with Corey and say, you know, maybe we can adjust our schedules. That's all I have. Well, I'm just letting you know that I stepped out and did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have two things. One is on the fire department replacement of equipment. I don't know exactly what piece of equipment it was, but I know Adam was upset one year that he was making the comment that if he didn't get that replacement this year, then it would throw off his whole schedule. That he didn't really, it really wasn't a crisis or anything that he had to get a certain vehicle replaced, but he didn't want to get out of the timing for everything else. And I'm just wondering if you guys ever go through with him his replacement schedule for equipment, and is there a methodology there for looking at, you know, does this piece of equipment really need to be replaced, or is it just that it's scheduled to be replaced, sort of thing?
Well, I think my expectation would be that to get onto a CIP list, that sort of justification would be made at that point. So, I mean, I'm living under the notion that when CIP brings forward a piece for this year, that work's been done. If we have to do that work, then that's another.
I don't know if that work's been done or not. I think
Well,
it seems like it's just a schedule.
I will tell you that in the time that I've been on the CIP committee, that as the projects are brought forward, they are looked into and justified. Now, the engine that is on the schedule for, let's say 2024, okay, and I don't know that there is one, but as an example, which would be 8 years out, that's in the schedule because the expectation is that the service life is 20 years on the equipment, and so that's why it's in at 2024, so that for planning purposes we can look forward and understand that there's equipment coming due. As the equipment enters the year when the recommendation would be to replace it, the discussion relative to the condition of the vehicle, repairs that have been done on the vehicle, what replacing it this year does, that's all part of that conversation. So it's, while the fire department is good at putting things on the schedule, that doesn't automatically mean that that's when it goes to town meeting.
You know, I think we've already had the discussion a couple of times that we need to look at the budget in total and the warrant articles in total. I mean, it isn't just, okay, we're gonna get a new fire engine this year. We may get a new fire engine this year, but it's gonna have to comport with where we want the budget driven. I mean, what other issues are there? What other needs are there at the town?
My second question is on the milfoil locations. You said, you know, the usual places. Is there something going on the land surrounding the lake in those places that could be addressed to help with that milfoil issue?
The biggest determinant of where, I would say there are two primary determinants of where we see milfoil growing. One is the structure of the lake bottom in that area, and the other one is activity in there. So for instance, the marinas are almost always going to have milfoil growing because there's milfoil in other areas of the lake. I take my boat and I drive it through some place where there's milfoil and little fragments of it attach themselves. I come back and I tie it in my slip, and the boat sits there and wave action causes the stuff to drop and take root in the bottom. The basin, because of the thick structure of old sawdust and that sort of thing, is very conducive to the growing of these plants. Now, in general, reducing the nutrients that run into the lake, in other words, not having True Green come out every 3 weeks and dump fertilizer on the lawn, helps with the growth of aquatic plants. We have a number of places that I'm aware of around the lakefront, and we'll be contacted several times during the season. Hey, I have weeds out in front of my house, and I don't ever remember having them here before. What do we do about getting them removed? Well, the answer is if it's a native plant, then by law you can't remove it. There are areas where there are native plants growing today that haven't been there in the past, and so why is that? Well, something's changed, and probably what's changed is we're putting more nutrients into the water to support plant growth. Of course, the Shoreland Protection Act restricts the use of the development within the band along the shore, and also the use of fertilizers and that sort of thing. How much is that done? I don't know. We don't have Shoreline Protection Act police, and I'm not suggesting that we should have, but
I'm just thinking there might be literature that could, if there's clearly in areas where it appears like it's a nutrient issue on the land, that, maybe some handouts to the landowners in that area, or some mailings to them, to make sure that they have got the information.
yeah, no, good idea. And we probably ought to, we have done some of that in the past, and and it probably certainly wouldn't hurt to do that sort of thing again.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what was the cost that David Ladd came up with?
1,500 something.
1,500?
$1,500.
$14.
$14.
I saw another hand here.
Chip has been talking in a number of meetings about putting things out to bid. Last year, the town report was not put out to bid. It's a small thing, but you add up a lot of small things and you get a big number. Are you going to put more things out to bid this year so that we can put together savings and actually save money?
Well, we're going to continue to have the discussion. I don't think we've come up with a policy, if you will. I don't know how many publishers of town reports there are, so.
Karen, how many, I know in past years you've contacted a number of companies and have asked for proposals, right?
Not since I've been here, that I can
Okay,
recall.
we did.
But
I know we received literature, so.
And we have changed, again, before I was on the board, we have changed printers on the town report, and done so, in my memory, at a considerable savings over the prior printer.
You are correct.
So, right?
Yep.
It's also possible that you wouldn't even, going local is great, but it's possible that you could print the reports through, Amazon. I don't know whether that would be a cost savings, but it's something to examine. And again, I'm not really speaking specifically about the town reports. It's one place where, as I said, things add up. So.
Well, as each occurrence happens, I'll bring it up again and again, so
Sure.
we'll try to do
Thanks,
it
Jim.
more often. And maybe when all of our seasons slow down a bit, we can talk about a policy.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board? Is there someone who wants to move to adjourn?
Adjournment?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, have a nice week.